I actually used to put mirrors all around my apartment. When I first met Eben in my apartment in New York, I had mirrors on every wall, like 2 really big mirrors, one over my bed I suspended. I believed that when I'm interacting with myself in the mirror, I am positing otherness and I'm building a sense of self-consciousness developmentally. And I just think that's useful to be relating to yourself as someone you care for, someone you admire.
It was actually very fascinating because it wasn't just a sexual thing. It was actually, if you're laying on the bed and talking, and there's another way to see the person you're talking to and interact with them, brings this like other perspective. It's actually really interesting. We haven't had a mirror on the ceiling in a while. Maybe we need to do that again, honey. That was actually cool.
Welcome, tribe. I'm Mayah Rose.
And I'm Gerald Rogers. We're about to embark on another mind-expanding episode where we dive deep into the realms of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
This is a transformational experience of healing, manifestation, increased clarity, flow, and alignment.
So join us on this sacred journey as we receive the codes of transformation from scientists and psychonauts, shamans, tantra masters, mystics, and more.
Together, we'll unravel the secrets of plant medicine, sex magic, and other tools to tap into higher states of consciousness.
So why are we here? To answer the call, to share our passions, and to be advocates for alternative healing.
So get ready for a ride that transcends the ordinary and leads you to the extraordinary, because living a legendary life is not just a choice.
It's a sacred adventure.
Welcome back, tribe, to Psychedelics, Sex, and the Superconscious, and I am so excited for a juicy conversation today with Annie, Lalla, and Eben Pagan, who are an extraordinary couple. We actually ran into them recently at the Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver and ended up inviting them to dinner and just got to know them, and their energy is so amazing. And just a little bit about them. So Eben actually was a dating guru in a past life. So Annie says she picks up where he left off, but he's a husband, a father, an entrepreneur that's very well respected. And Annie, oh my gosh, I have to pull this up because I love what you have on your website. You say you're a cartographer of love. If you don't believe in true love, how can you ever have it? So you have a long list of things, including studying evolutionary psychology, integral therapy, spiral dynamics, integral family systems. And now you guys are committed to helping couples be able to access the super conscious through their relationship. Am I right?
Yes.
Well, and one thing
Yes.
I would actually love for you to do too, because I know I left out a lot of juicy pieces, but I'd love to actually have you introduce each other too as we dive into this conversation. So, Eben, is there anything you want to add about Annie that I missed?
Annie is, she's the love visionary, I would say. You mentioned that I was a dating guru in a past life, and I interviewed and got to know, many of the top love and relationship experts in the world. And when I met Annie, she just could see in a way that no one else can. And she really is a visionary in the domain of true love, in the domain of actually finding your soulmate.
Mm. Well, of course, she practiced that finding you. So
Well, I actually had to believe in love for both of us. When I met Eben, I could see that he was good at dating because he was a dating coach, but he didn't really know how to make relationships work. Mm. They never really lasted for him. And I could tell that he had some disempowering frames, like whether it could ever work for him. I don't know if he believed in love. He didn't seem too keen about marriage and kids and all of the standard long-term commitment. So I really had my work cut out for me. I had to believe in love, marriage, kids for both of us. And so what I was able to pull out from him is the inner idealist, the inner visionary, because he's a visionary in his own right and in his domain that he's been mapping. And so I think where we met is in our resolute and fierce devotion to evolution, to growth, which is all pathways to the superconscious. And I fell in love with not just his consciousness, but its commitment to evolving. Mm. And I think that's something we really share in our value set. We teach together for a living. We run programs, we teach coaches, we teach relationship technology, but what's really funding all of the enterprises we do is we're deeply committed to evolving consciousness at the level of the individual, but even more at the level of collaborative dyads, couples in love. Because I think your fastest access point to higher consciousness is to be in a true love crucible.
Yeah.
Where your partner sees your beauty and your magnificence, but also your myopias and your madness and stands for your development.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of meeting, you guys met at Burning Man. You may or may not have been on psychedelics. I'll let you share if you want to. But you really, I love what you said. And I want to dive deep right away because this whole show is about accessing the superconscious. You two obviously were already in circles. You'd already had done parts and pieces of your own work, but then you came together to create something greater and the ability to access the superconscious. So I'd love to hear just a little bit more about your story, your evolution, and then what you do now to access or reach the superconscious.
Well, our story is I went to Burning Man in 2008. Some friends took me literally on a whim. They just said, you have to come to this. And I had other friends go and tell me I needed to go. And I couldn't believe it. I was, I was absolutely shocked. I had hippie parents. And so I grew up in the backwoods of Oregon and, going to, the country fair, previously called the Renaissance Fair and so forth. And, and then I kind of spent decades not doing that. And then it showed up at Burning Man and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what all of that turned into. It all grew up while I wasn't watching. And after, the first year there, I just said, these are the craziest, most creative, most interesting people anywhere. And so the second year I decided I would do a talk. And so I just took all of my best ideas about the future and about leadership and kind of how I saw us evolving as a species. And I did a talk and it was on a Friday afternoon, in a dusty tent. And maybe you should tell the rest of the story, honey.
So I walk into this dusty tent at Burning Man to grab all my friends because all of the friends at my camp went to go see this guy speak who was Eben, but they were calling him the smart entrepreneur marketing guy. And I didn't want to learn marketing. So I didn't go to the talk. I went riding through Burning Man for Critical Tits, which is the big parade where you dress up and you don't wear a top. So all the women had their boobs out, which I usually don't have. But that day I was dressed in feathers and diamonds and silver. And I just waltzed in to this tent to find my friends. And he was still talking. Eben was still like 2/3 into a 3-hour talk. So I sat down and I listened. And within 15 minutes of hearing him articulate his ideas and express his vision for the species, I was just like, who is this? He was not talking about marketing at all. He was literally talking about how in order for the species to upgrade its consciousness to the next level, it requires each individual human to find what they're passionate about, what they're purpose-driven around, and to actualize along that vector. And it spoke straight to some part of me that wanted to be more expressed as an individual. And that was the moment where I was like, oh my God, I love him. And at the end, he, had a little group asking him questions. I was too shy to go up because I was really kind of smitten by that point. But my friends went up and they got his email. And so I started corresponding with him via email, which was more comfortable for me. And we developed a friendship. He had been seeing a woman at the time. But over time, we became friends and started dating. And within about 4 months, I think he recognized that I was the one. And that's when our romance really began.
Oh, I love that. Eben, do you remember seeing her there?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was in the middle of the talk. I was like doing a talk and all of a sudden she walked in.
I do want to see
topless, looking fantastic. So I remember the exact moment when I first saw her.
And I remember the moment where I recognized his spirit in his speech, which was really a bird call. He didn't know he was doing a bird call, but when you're speaking at Burning Man about your cutting edge ideas and you're in flow, it is a bird call that's speaking to the right person. And I heard it. And then I saw, as I was watching him articulate his ideas, I thought, I've never seen a man like this. Every man I'd been with had been like a really sophisticated like car, like a Lexus or a Mercedes Benz or a Ferrari, really high quality men I dated. But Eben was like the Starship Enterprise, like a new class of vehicle. And I'd never felt that before. I just never seen a man express themselves like that. So that definitely something clicked. But I think it took about 4 months for him to have it click in the other direction.
Yeah.
Thank you, honey.
I love hearing your story and how you guys met in that moment where you felt it in your body and you saw her walking in. And of course, that's all important. But let's fast forward to where you are today. I know you have a great relationship. You're teaching couples. I know there's also pieces that you had to work through as in any relationship. But I want to kind of fast forward now to some of the practices that you two use when it comes to accessing the superconscious and how we can do that in relationship. And what are some of the things to look out for in that way? And I'll just give a little bit of a story of my interest in this. So Gerald and I, we kind of accidentally found out about the power of being able to access the superconscious in lovemaking, of what it felt like. And I'll never forget the moment when we were having this deep connected lovemaking experience. And all of a sudden it felt like I was no one, nothing, nowhere. And then boom, this download or idea came into my head. And I remember sitting up and being like, oh, wow, I just got this idea. And it was, and going into the session, we'd been thinking about something that we wanted to co-create together. And what I realized in that moment is there's actually a way to channel your sexual energy, and especially when you're in partnership, into manifestation, into the superconscious, into accessing these greater states of consciousness. So I would love to just dive deep right now and hear some of your practices and what you do when it comes to as a couple, because you also are co-creating as a couple. You do business together, you're parents together, you do life together. So how do you use that sexual energy to be able to access or manifest the superconscious or create the things that you want in your relationship and your business?
Yeah, well, I just want to highlight that I don't make a distinction between sexual energy and creative energy and imagination and visioning. Like, to me, the creative force that funds all living entities is a force towards persisting and spreading across space and time and iterating many permutations. And so whenever I feel an imaginative idea abduct me or a sexual desire, I have it as sacred. It doesn't mean I act on every single one, but something sacred is happening. The universe is attempting to extend itself and split test a new aspect of reality. And so I want to relate to that as sacred. I think that's the first.
Yeah, I just got full body chills when you said that, by the way. I love that.
25 or 30 years ago, when I learned about systems thinking and I learned about the idea of emergence and emergent properties, this idea that, one ant alone in a field will die, but a million ants that weighs 3 or 4 pounds that have all grown up together, they act as an entity, that they actually act as what's called a superorganism. It's a transcendent organism, and it can make decisions. It can do complex architecture. It can choose where to move. And then, I learned that, reality is these nested, as Arthur Kessler called them, holons, these whole parts, subatomic particles in atoms, atoms in molecules, molecules in organelles, organelles in cells, in tissues, in organs, in bodies. And that each of these is an emergent order of life that has its own validity and its own existence, and that we are in the middle of one of these miraculous kind of, holarchies. It so blew my mind that there could be super organisms, that there could be organisms on higher orders. And I had gone through a phase of my life where I was kind of a rational, kind of materialist kind of person. And then woke up to this, and it's like, going into this relationship with that model then had me start looking at our relationship and asking, okay, well, what is the super entity here? What is the super conscious? What is the super organism? And the more I looked for it, the more I saw it. And the more I realized that, Annie calls it the third eye, the third letter I, meaning the third identity. Mm-hmm. And of course, third eye is the, kind of the other side of the coin there in a certain way. And it's like, when you look at your relationship as having a superorganism or superconscious dimension to it, and you start relating to it as being something that is transcendent to you and beyond you, but something that you can have a relationship with, this in a lot of ways just opens up the portal to then being able to live in relationship with something that would be that weird. You know what I'm saying? Like that strange to relate to. And then you can start doing, what you're maybe calling magic with something.
It's like an
that.
oracle.
Yeah.
This third eye, the relationship emergent entity that includes and transcends each of us as individuals, has more influence and power to create than either of us could ever have alone, which is the reason to be in a relationship, is that you're able to create more value in that dynamic than you could solo, right? Because it's work to be in a relationship. It's like a three-legged race. A relationship, when it can finally learn to walk and do something and create value, is when they learn to collaborate. So a lot of what we teach is how to create collaborative dynamics between people, personal and professional, and see how a conflict is a collaboration trying to happen. And a collaboration is a conflict done right. So we really mapped the dance between conflict and collaboration. And I think collaboration is how two parts of any system learn about each other, dance together, tessellate together, and actually trade codes to become more intelligent. So in our relationship, we're constantly cross-training each other in our different skills so that we cultivate more consciousness individually. I'm constantly learning from Eben. He's learning from me. I mean, you fall in love with your favorite teacher. That's what falling in love is. You hire your favorite teacher to emancipate you from your small, defended self into your higher consciousness, more aligned with your values, more expressed on your dharmic imperative. And I mean, you shouldn't settle for anything less than that. So to be in love is just on its own an access portal to the superconscious, to your higher consciousness. And then the relationship entity is like a wise oracle that you can attune to. It's at another level of intelligence than either of you are at. And I think, when you talk about accessing the superconscious, but I see consciousness as the substrate of reality itself. So your consciousness is the substrate, but it's also an emergent at the top. It's like we are consciousness ossified recursively on top of itself in loops. And so anytime a piece of reality communes with another in a way that's undefended and it is a shift, a transfer of intelligence, I feel consciousness increases in the cosmos. So that's why I'm standing for true love and intimacy and have mapped it the way I have, because I actually think your only access to quantum levels of consciousness is through intimate dances with other parts of reality, in particular in romantic relationship.
No, I love how you said that we can become more. There's more potential when we're in relationship, right? And that's something that I think is interesting, because there's always, that dance between codependency and why is it that sometimes in relationships we feel like we're less of ourselves? And why is it in sometimes relationships we feel like we're accessing the superconscious? And I would love to dive more into that. I want to hear what you have to say too, Eben. But one of the things that became one of the profound moments that I had recently, and this is my belief, is that this masculine feminine or this partnership dynamic is all over ancient Egypt. I just got back from Egypt, and on all the walls you see Ankh staff. It's masculine, feminine, which exists within us, right? It's that learning how to understand and access those points within us, but also in union or in relationship. Like the keys to this are written all over the walls of ancient Egypt. Like, I think this is something that we as a human race have been aware of for a long time, but I think over history we've forgotten, or there's certain things that have happened, or we get into these relationships that are toxic, and instead of accessing the superconscious, we're like the crabs in the bucket pulling each other down every time we try and reach a new level because of whatever, our own insecurities, past beliefs, past stories, toxic things and patterns, whatever that is. So I really, really love that you are taking a stand for the relationship as a whole can accelerate or can expand your access to the superconscious. So yeah, Eben, go ahead. What did you want to add?
Yeah, well, and also in the romantic / sexual relationship dynamic, I think we have to kind of face and embrace and transcend just the fundamental realities of it. So, at an animal level, I learned from ethology, studying Konrad Lorenz, that if you ever see two animals fighting, right, usually they're the same species. And that's just really interesting, that aggression usually happens between animals of the same species. And this is really crazy. I just saw this the other day. Some new research showed that usually when two animals are fighting and they're the same species, one's male and one's female. That the most common configuration for conflict, right, is two of the same species and one's male and one's female. And so what we've learned, what Annie and I have learned, right, is that you get these two basic archetypes, okay? And, borrowing on Pagan's idea of agency and communion, in romantic relationships, some people call them masculine and feminine, some call them yin and yang and so forth. And some of these have baggage. And sometimes the man can be either one or the woman can be either one, but you usually have, but you usually have one of each type. And one of them usually represents the side that feels boundaryless, that feels connected to the other, that feels like they're one with the universe, and like they really stand for the relationship. And then you usually have another person in the relationship, again, in the true love, in the long-term relationships, the ones that really last, one person in the relationship that's more of the individual, the kind of boundaried, separate self that stands for the individual identities in the relationship. And it's this attraction and repulsion in perfect balance, right? And that's the key, is a true love relationship is that perfect balance of attraction and repulsion, in the same way that the earth and the moon, the moon going around the earth, it's like there's gravity attracting the moon to the earth, but then there's also the momentum and the centrifugal force that's pulling it away, but they're in this perfect dance. Yeah. And so when you understand this, then it allows you to, I think, move beyond it, because a lot of people, when they see conflict or they feel upset by their partner or something, they just say, oh, well, this can't be love, or this can't be, right, rather than realizing, no, this is ancient. This is hundreds of millions of years old, this dynamic that we're in here. And we want to welcome and embrace this energy, but we want to learn to move beyond that. And from there, then we can actually put those forces together, like a left and right brain, or, like Annie likes to say, like two wings on one bird.
We were talking about accessing new levels of consciousness, and you fall in love with someone who's conscious in a way that you are unconscious. You fall in love with your unconscious mind. You hire someone to emancipate you. And so, again, these two polarities in all long-term successful relationships, in all true love relationships, there's one partner that's guarding the sacred polarity of communion, connection, us, we. One person that's guarding the sacred polarity of sovereignty, independence, autonomy, separateness. And you need both in equal measures to have a healthy relationship. Think of the relationship as breathing in, connection, communion together, breathing out, separation, autonomy, apart. And you need equal amounts of both. And again, you have one partner guarding one and the other partner guarding the other, and you come together to cross-train, so you develop your underdeveloped skill. And we're talking about the male-female dichotomy you mentioned in Egyptian signage in the temples. We were there too, and we saw it. But I actually think the human dance is a continual exploration and transcendence of all dichotomies. Male, female, good, bad, right, wrong, open, closed, black, white. And the holding of two seemingly opposite antithetical perspectives forces you, if you don't fall onto one side or the other, forces you up the developmental spiral to a level that subsumes the either or, where you hold both as dignified and valid. And that is how we grow and develop psychologically. That's how we raise our consciousness, is a spiral. But every spiral rung depends on your ability to transcend, which means include and go beyond the dichotomy that you're wrestling with. So transcending dichotomies is how human minds move up into higher consciousness. And I think the male-female dance, and then all the differences in your value sets and philosophies, if you can hold them as intelligent and worthy of being curious and integrating, then you hoist yourself up by falling more in love with your partner's crazies, which further integrates you and makes you more balanced.
Well, I love this. I actually remember, I think you guys were speaking at Abundance Amplifier years ago. We were speaking there too. And I heard you talk about this, and I knew right away, I'm like, oh, I'm the one that stands for relationship, and Gerald's the one that stands for the universal expansion, consciousness, tribe, family. And I'm like, no, we got to protect our time. We got to have our rest days. We got to have our boundaries. But what's so beautiful about it is it allows for expansion and contraction in a way that allows for growth. So when our time is being too consumed by projects or Burning Man or whatever it is we're working on, then I take a stand for no, we're going to, I really would love an us day. And when I'm getting too much and I just want to be here and let's just be us. And he's like, no, let's go out. Let's explore. Let's, expand our consciousness. So I really love that. And how that's shown up for us in the dynamic of our relationship, but also I think in the dynamic of sexuality too, is that when we're doing this romantic dance together, that's exactly what allows for us to have enough of the focused time and energy together to really build and create that union and that energy, but then also the expansion to be able to send it out into the universe and to create something more than we could ever create just on our own and to have that received. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I know, Annie, you talked about this idea that, and I'm paraphrasing, but, it's life force energy, whether we're talking about orgasm or we're talking about creation or we're talking about whatever that is the life force of energy moving through us. But, as a couple and in this dynamic, how do you, specifically you two, grow that life force energy, and how do you direct or channel it into something that you're creating? Because I think that a lot of people that are in coupleship that have a great relationship even don't know how to direct that energy. And then, of course, you have people that are struggling with the dynamic. But how do you specifically build and channel that energy of your life force?
Well, I have a motto, never waste an orgasm. Like literally, if I'm having an orgasm alone or with my partner, I'm going to use it, because the moment you're reaching that little death, that height of pleasure, just like on a psychedelic trip, all your normal parsings of what reality is and identity, it melts. And you get to reinvent yourself in that orgasm. All of reality gets to be reinvented in that moment. I mean, every moment, but that one in particular. And so I always hold a vision of something I'm wanting to create, some outcome I'm trying to produce in the world, some upgrade to our relationship or a project. And I hold it gently, not with a death grip, but I hold it loosely, the way you might hold a baby bird with a broken wing, right? To keep it secure. And I run that visual while I'm in orgasm. Sometimes I even invite Eben into it. I'm like, come on, run it with me. Because it's a moment of creation. I mean, it's literally the moment where a child could get born from. I mean, making a human life is the best magic trick going in the known universe that I have seen. And making love is where a child's life comes from. And I mean, if that's not creative manifestation, I don't know what is. So we're co-opting that life force energy that can create a human life and use it to create anything you want. I mean, people call it sex magic. It's kind of a thing now. But there's even projects Eben and I have been working on together. And I'm like, okay, we're going in. So just let's remember the thing that we want to create. And sometimes I yell it out. Well, yeah. Sometimes I remind him beforehand. Sometimes he starts laughing because he thinks it's slightly ridiculous to be doing this sometimes. But I deeply believe, and what do you get to lose anyway? I deeply believe that it's a moment of drastic reinvention at the level of reality itself. You get to reinvent yourself, and you get to reinvent outcomes and visions. And so to me, the highest use of imagination, and the reason we have it, is to employ it in service of generating a vision that is so true, good, and beautiful, it cannot help but corral the universe in that direction. But you have to have the courage to believe in it. And I think that's what generates higher consciousness, is the courage to believe in something that has no evidence yet. And that's called faith. And that's something that we teach and we employ in our relationship when we're in a drama, but also when we're trying to create something that doesn't look like it's likely to happen.
Yeah, no, she's serious about that stuff. When I met her, she was doing things like, wanting to become a successful coach and like whatever, putting money on the bed and then making herself feel good while thinking about being successful as a coach and so forth. And every once in a while, she'll be like, oh, I forgot to, think about my vision when I was having my orgasm. She's like a very visionary sexual energy director. And I mean, if you just stop and think about it for a minute here, we come from a lineage of millions of generations of successful couples getting together and being driven by whatever you want to call it, sex, eros, attraction, the superconscious, whatever we want to call it, they came together successfully, unbroken for billions of years. And here we are right now, and we have this thing called a quote unquote conscious mind, where we can think about our own thinking. And then in fact, we can actually direct our own thinking. We can intentionally think about things. When are some of the most challenging times to direct your own consciousness? Right? Well, when you're under the spell of strong emotions, or when you're under the spell of the sexual drive, or under the spell of an orgasm, let's just say. And so in a way, one of the highest consciousness things that you can do is to use your creative imagination when you're having sex, particularly, right, at that kind of climax point. And so it's a form of, let's call it visionary meditation, actually to do this. And it's practicing something that almost no one has in history.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that. And I love how you call it a practice too, because I think it is a practice. And what a better thing to practice. I really enjoy practicing this way. But to be able to practice channeling that energy, focusing your mind at creating, if you will. And I love your story that you shared about Annie. Gerald and I actually, this was years ago, but we were teaching a workshop on abundance and money, and we were calling some abundance into our life. So we actually went to the bank and we got $10,000 out in $100 bills, and we spread it all over the bed. And we're like, all right, let's create this heightened state in our minds as we make love on the bed together. And with this form of a representation of abundance in our field. And let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens. And it was really fascinating because within the next 2 weeks, we had at least 3 or 4 things happen where we received unexpected money, or we got some big break or something like that. And we're like, wow, this is amazing. And it also really brought us together. And I think that's one of the things that this does and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this when we're talking about sacred union, or we're talking about being in relationship, having a singular focus, like you talked about at the beginning, Eben, where these ants would come together and they created this single orgasm. And Annie, you talked about, I think the word used was triad in your relationship. What was the word?
3 entities, the third eye.
The third eye, right? And bring that together and creating this unified field of desire or consciousness around something, and then entering together into that heightened state of orgasm. So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with putting the money on the bed, I actually did do that just like you. But one of the refinements that I thought worked better was, instead of just thinking of value coming in the form of money while masturbating, I imagined value going out with my coaching and my teaching, and then value coming in, because everything in nature is in a circuit. And so I kept imagining high value going out, high value coming in, and running that. And I think if anyone ever tries that, you want to always be circulating the sexual energy so it feels good on all fronts.
Yeah, great tip. I love that. Love that. Eben, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, I think you may have just invented a new word, right? So it's a super orgasmism.
Super conscious organism. Yeah. I mean, we're all about super conscious. I mean, super. I don't know how I actually think consciousness doesn't even exist if it doesn't have an other, a posited other. Like a child when it's born is not yet conscious until it cultivates a sense of otherness from the mom. That's why mother is the first other. Yeah. And in the face of an other, you develop your own sense of self. And I think the more you're able to relate to otherness effectively, your own, in yourself and other people, the higher your consciousness. I actually used to put mirrors all around my apartment. When I first met Eben in my apartment in New York, I had mirrors on every wall, like 2 really big mirrors, one over my bed I suspended. I literally just wanted, and it's not just, I want to look at myself. I believed that when I'm interacting with myself in the mirror, I am positing otherness, and I'm building a sense of self-consciousness developmentally. And I just think that's useful to be relating to yourself as someone you care for, someone you admire.
Yeah, I met her.
What do you
She literally had a big mirror, this big metal mirror hanging from chains above her bed. And
I made it. I made it myself.
Yeah, part of me was like, huh, this is interesting. But it was actually very fascinating because it wasn't just a sexual thing. It was actually, if you're laying on the bed and talking, and there's another way to see the person you're talking to and interact with them, brings this like other perspective. It's actually really interesting. We haven't had a mirror on the ceiling in a while. Maybe we need to do that again, honey. That was actually cool.
I know. I'm thinking about that going, wow, I want to try that. I love that. And I love what you brought up about just having that relationship even with yourself and understanding that. And that's also so important when you're bringing it into a relationship. I want to kind of shift focus a little bit here. We've been talking about the fun stuff, which is the coming together, the creating third eye, the sexual energy, some of the practices we can do. But what do you think prevents people from getting there? Because I think there's a lot of couples who want to experience that. I think there's a lot of people that say, great, this sounds amazing that I can create something more with my partner than I could alone. But it's not happening for them. So what are the things that prevent that oneness? What are the third eye? What are the things that prevent people from really getting into that space in relationship?
Well, first looking at the differences in your partner as a problem instead of the place in which they can teach and expand your consciousness. You literally hire someone who's sufficiently different from you and versed in an area to teach you, but then you get frustrated when they try to teach you. And so surrendering to the genius of your partner and actually becoming an apprentice to where they have prowess consciously, I think is a good move. I mean, when I first met Eben, he would just stand in a room of people and they would want to go one place for dinner and he would want to go a different place. And I would normally just fold, like whatever everyone wants. And he would just stand there and be like, no, that doesn't work for me. And he'd hold a boundary and he'd articulate his needs. And I'd be like, how the hell do you do that? Like, what are you doing here? Because I don't know how to do that. And it would teach me what to do inside my subjective psyche to dignify everyone else's needs, but also maintain contact with my own so that I could hold my desire in the face of it being out of rapport with others. He was basically teaching me how to have a self, an autonomous, differentiated self. And I've been learning it over the years and getting better. I had to teach him how to be more porous and attuned to other people's needs unspoken, like intuitively. So he taught me how to empathize with myself, which raised my consciousness. I could empathize with others really well, but not myself. So I was imbalanced. And I taught him how to empathize with others more. So we're always either empathizing with ourselves or others, and we tend in one direction or the other. And whichever direction you tend to do the least is what you need to cultivate to be more balanced. And I actually think, as I said before, consciousness increases every time you transcend a polarity, a dichotomy, a place where you have a death grip or a fundamentalist attachment to it being one way or the other. You're lopsided and you want to get able to be holding two sides of a dichotomy. You can still have a preference, but you're not being puppeted by your fundamentalism.
Yeah. I can really relate to what you were saying in there. When Gerald and I first got in a relationship too, it sounds very much like you and Eben, where I remember actually a conversation I had with him during one of our very first phone calls after we started dating. And he asked me what I wanted. I forget the context of it, but I gave him an answer. He's like, no, I don't want you to give me the answer that you think I want to hear. I'm actually asking you, what do you want? I had to think for a second. I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do I actually want? Like, I was so used to being attuned to other people and their needs and their wants that this had led to me graduating from our marriage because I'd become so codependent that I lost myself. And I think this is where people get lost too, because they think about this idea of becoming one. And what they think it means is they need to become more like my partner. And I love what you just described, because it's not actually becoming more like your partner or doing whatever your partner wants or wanting whatever they want. It's actually, and I love how you put it, allowing and surrendering into what your partner, how they're different and what they can teach you about it.
My answer to your question is that we all need to grow up. Like that's what's really holding so many people back is literally just not allowing themselves to grow up and become mature and face the reality of what it means to be an adult human being, to be responsible for children and to be responsible for your relationship and for your community and for your world, and to deal with pain and suffering and death, and to face all of the hard stuff, and to interact with other people who are going through challenges, to support other people who are going through conflicts and going through loss and grief. And when you do that, I think when you kind of like embrace the whole thing, when you throw yourself all the way into life, that you can then come back to your relationship. I mean, one of the greatest, Mayah Rose, one of the best things in my life is that Annie is a love coach, because she goes and works with people that are having romantic relationship problems all the time. And then she'll come back to me once in a while and just like, maybe she and I are fighting about something, and she'll come back and she'll just have softened, and she'll say, I just got off, a call with some couple that's fighting about something that's just, horrible. And it's made me realize what I've got here, And so when you do this, I think when you take all of it on in life and you face it all and you deal with it, and you take the responsibility for being an adult, for leading a family, for helping other people through, again, pain, suffering, conflict, loss, it allows you then to come back to your own relationship. And even though you might be feeling upset or resentful or angry or sad or whatever the feeling you might be feeling, you can still remember, and I've got someone here, and we have love, and you can move back and forth between these things, because a lot of people get stuck in a, like maybe a traumatic experience in their life, and they have like a trauma response where they just get stuck repeating loops, or they get stuck in a certain feeling around their partner, and they can't, loosen that up and move through it. And so I think maturity is a lot of the answer, so that we can be grateful for the moments that we have. I had one of my mentors, he said, when you're happy, laugh. And when you're sad, cry. Right? So that you can process it, and so that you can be sad when you're sad, and so that you can be happy when you're happy. And you're not like a person who's, at home hanging out with their kid, but like texting the whole time, or at work, trying to figure out what to do with their family. And it's like all gray zone and all just mixed up. By growing up and taking this on, you can differentiate these things, but then, find each other again.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're highlighting here is that the experience of being a human being is to experience maximal aliveness in the full spectrum of human experience, which is all emotions. And one of the things I'm committed to is shifting the conversation around love from happily ever after to alive ever after. And you shine white light through a glass prism, it breaks out into the rainbow. And when you shine love through a human heart, it breaks out into the full spectrum of all human emotions. So to say I love you is to say I'm willing to feel happiness, joy, jealousy, shame, despair, rage, hopelessness, the full spectrum, which is your aliveness, and allowing your partner to feel all their emotions, their fear, their anger, their sadness, without rescuing or fixing or dismissing them. Because the whole point of being in a relationship is to maximize your aliveness. And the opposite of dead is not happy, it's alive. And I want to bring in mortality, since we're going deep. Every single difficult emotion, fear, anxiety, shame that you have is at its base, you can distill it down to fear of death. Like mortality is the mother of all fears. And so the more you can be with the wide range of your different experiences as a human, feelings, the more you dance with shame, fear, anxiety, sadness, all of the difficult emotions, the more practice you're taking on for the ultimate test in this life game, which is how you dance with mortality. how you transition, because you want to optimize for that last moment of life being one of triumph, not lament. And so in order to do that, you have to live a life that you can sign your name triumphantly to, which is what allows you to die without lament. And so when you can have mortality on your shoulder as you move through reality, guiding you, reminding you what's coming, there's a finality, it forces a higher level of presence and consciousness that otherwise wouldn't be available. So I actually think the finitude of our life, its mortality itself, is what allows us to continuously raise our consciousness, which is why life has that built in.
Well, what beautiful reflections. And I love that so much, and allowing for your partner to have that full spectrum of emotions and allowing for yourself to do it. At a wake up call a couple of years ago at Burning Man, when Gerald was having a hard time and I was trying to fix it and I was trying to make it better. And I was wondering what's wrong with me. And a good friend of ours said, do you love Gerald unconditionally? And I said, yes. And he said, do you love all of him? And I said, yes. And he's like, I don't think you love that part of him when he's sad or when something's not going right. And I said, why do you think that? And he's like, 'cause you're trying to fix it. You won't actually just let it be. You won't actually just love him in it. You have to make it something wrong about you or him that needs to be fixed. And it was a huge wake up call for me. And I love what you said about the mortality, on our deathbed. There's been study after study on this. People never look back and say, I wish that I'd worked more. I wish that I'd spent more time with my partner. I wish that I'd loved more. I wish that I'd had more deep connection with my family and my kids. So what beautiful reflections.
The way you cope with mortality and every ancillary feeling that comes out of that is to learn to create safety in your body when it's dysregulated, when you're scared, when you're anxious, when you're confused. And the ability to continuously learn to be with your sensations, breathe into what's alive in your nervous system is the act of growing up, being an adult. An adult is someone who realizes no one's coming to save you. If I want to feel safe, I need to create that in my body and create a life that produces that. And that gives you back your agency. And so mortality forces you to learn how to create safety in your body, which is what gives you the power of presence to make the outcomes you want in your life.
And allowing your partner to do the same, right? I love that. Okay, so before we get into my final question that I have for you today, I just want to go back and review, Eben and then Annie, what's one tangible tip for experiencing more connection or energy in your relationship? So I'll have Eben go first and then Annie. Eben, what would be your one tangible tip for somebody that's listening? What would you recommend that they do?
Well, listening to Annie talk there reminded me, I'm going to say what she said in a different way because I think that it's the best tip, which is, Annie's been my greatest teacher, and maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe the most important thing that she's taught me is that this idea that that aliveness is what we're optimizing for here. Okay. And that what a lot of people do when they become afraid, when they become upset, when they become whatever, is they go to sex to distract themselves rather than going to noticing that they feel really alive when they're feeling a strong feeling. And this insight for me, because I really didn't like feeling negative emotions or painful emotions. It's not like my favorite thing or anything. I don't wake up right now, and go, oh my gosh, I want to feel fear and disgust and, jealousy or anything. But when I have the presence of mind and consciousness to remember when I'm feeling a strong emotion or even a strong physical sensation like pain, that I'm alive, it's a really strong like jolt of aliveness, that somehow has just been one of the most important, biggest things for me, like one of the biggest insights, the biggest awakenings, because by experiencing more aliveness, it's made me less afraid of death. And then that allows me to be more present in relationship, to kind of answer your question.
Beautiful. I love that. Annie, what's your one tangible tip?
Is to see every piece of feedback from your partner as an attempt of them trying to carve you into your greatest self, them trying to help you be more aligned with your values and your actualized desires, and to listen for the commitment behind their complaint. What like literally ask them, I see you're upset right now. I see you're frustrated. What is the greater version of me that you're standing for? And then see if you can help translate and decode the grumble, frustrated criticism into an inspirational invitation to growth. And then if you have a complaint towards your partner and you're frustrated with them, which happens, can you take your grumble, your frustration, and transmute it into an invitation to their greatness? I call it going from WTF stance, what the fuck, with shame, blame, make wrong. Like, why did you do the thing? Or why haven't you done the thing? And translating it into what I call MLK stance, which stands for Martin Luther King. And if there was ever a person who had every reason to be what the fuck, it was him, but he didn't. He said, I have a dream. And he created an inspirational invitation for an entire nation to go to their next level. And so anytime you have a grumble towards your partner, you have a choice. You can either shudder your upset onto your partner with shame, blame, make wrong, or criticism, or you can get a behavior change. You decide. You never get both. So when you're ready to actually stop shuddering your frustration onto them and actually get a change, then take your frustration and translate it, alchemize it into an inspirational invitation that uses their own values in a custom crafted marketing campaign to inspire them towards a version of themselves that they would be more proud of. That takes work. It's much easier just to grumble at someone, but the work you have to do to inspire another into their greatness is the work you need to do to transcend your own shadow. So this is what I love about true love, is who you have to be to stand for your partner's greatness is a more extraordinary version of yourself. So even your partner's crazies are custom crafted by the universe to carve you into a next level version of yourself. And that's the symmetrical beauty of being in true love.
I have to say before I ask this last question that I just really love your energy as a couple. It's like this dance between the heart and the mind and the, reason and the energy and the spirit. So anyway, thank you for who you are and for showing up and for being willing to share your expertise, your knowledge, your experience with the world, because I really do believe that this is how we access, the greatness within us. So thank you so much for sharing. So my last question for you both, and I know you've worked with a lot of couples. You may have even had some experiences of your own, but what are your thoughts on the use of psychedelics and being in relationship? And we don't have to go deep on this one, but just in general, is it something you'd recommend, not recommend? Are there any things that you've seen that really have worked within couples or that haven't? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I just want to say love is the strongest psychedelic known to mankind, womankind. So it's the only way to fly. That's why I've dedicated my life to it. So that's the first thing. But I think you mean other kinds of psychedelics. And so, I have seen it transform individuals through pain and trauma that they have struggled with their whole life. I've seen it reinvent couples that were on the brink of breakup and be able to create anew from scratch a designer relationship. And so I think done with very intentional consciousness around setting and support and an extreme emphasis on the integration of what came up through the psychedelic session so that it gets built into the baseline and doesn't just float away. I think it's a complete transformational crucible for human
And do you
beings.
have a favorite for couples? I know it's the last question, but I couldn't help. It was bubbling up.
MDMA was invented originally in Big Pharma for couples work. So it lends itself quite beautifully for couples relaxing the ego on which their affairs hang so that their heart is more porous, they feel more resilient, and so they're able to talk through issues that often bring up defense and tension historically. So that's what MDMA was originally created for. So my suspicion is that would be the one that lends itself to couple work, most likely. And
Annie got her mom into the original, this is 15 years ago now, Johns Hopkins psilocybin research project, like the very first one that had been done in decades. And because she had had cancer before that, and cancer ultimately wound up taking her life, maybe another 5 years after that or so. And I was there when she came home from the experience, and she looked at me and she said, I think that I got the cancer so that I could have that experience, because it was the most profound experience that she had had. And then went on to do some, medicine sessions with her and her husband, Annie's father, that were absolutely transformational. And then also with my father. And so we're real believers in, when used consciously, intentionally, setting, very responsibly, that there just is nothing like this in terms of the transformational power, or orders of magnitude probably beyond whatever the next best thing would be.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like psychedelics can accelerate a lot of what we've talked about on this podcast too. And I also really appreciate and love your comment at the beginning, Annie, because I think it's also a reminder that it's not something to escape into. It's something to use as an enhancement or a tool to access the love that's already there. And that love really is the greatest psychedelic. So for all couples out there that are listening to this, that are curious about accessing the superconscious, about the dynamics of your relationship, and it really resonated with what Annie and Eben said today, I'd love for you guys to share how people can learn more from you, how they can get a hold of you or get information about what you do.
Well, they can always follow me. I'm on Instagram at Lallabird, Lalla, double L in the middle, LALLABIRD. So that's my Instagram handle. My website is AnnieLalla.com, ANNIELALLA.com. I have lots of free resources there.
Go to Annie's website, AnnieLalla.com. We've got some free reports, true love tests. There's some really great things on there that you can get access to.
We do a lot of webinars, free classes where we teach together. We teach many programs together for coaches, couples, people who want to be in relationships, solo or currently in a relationship. Like, I teach everything there is to do about love and be a relationship leader. To learn how to lead your relationship from where it is now into where you vision it could be. That's really what I'm committed to. And teaching people how to integrate their emotions so that they can be more connected to love, which I think is your portal to super consciousness.
Just as we wrap up today, I'd love to hear your final thought from each of you. Just if there was one thing that you would want the people listening out there to hear from today, what would it be? Let's go to Eben and then Annie.
True love is a real thing. I was shocked after over 35, almost 40 years of life to discover that this is, in fact, an actual real thing, and it's possible, and it's actually possible for you. It's possible for everybody, and don't settle. Keep going and keep going through the pain and find it. And it's not that when you find it, all of a sudden your problems go away, because actually your problems get bigger. It's just that they're much higher quality problems, and they're problems that can grow you, spiritually. And it's so worth it. It's the, I think it's the most important trip, that you can take in this lifetime.
Yeah. I think it might be the highest game a human being can play. My favorite quote about love is, the difference between love and true love is the difference between a very large number and infinity. And so never settle. Infinity is also what we might call the universe or God or the current moment, which has no edge. And so the more you can access information fresh off the press of your consciousness in the present moment through your 5 senses or your interoception, proprioception, the more you're attuned to your nervous system, the more you have access to the present moment, now, your highest self, God, all of it. It's the same thing. And so love, you, now, God, that's super consciousness. And so there's nothing else to do in any moment but to close your eyes, turn inwards, and go, what's happening right here in this sacred vessel? And if you do that, how you react to the world, how you dance through reality will be infinitely more attuned with the future outcomes that you want.
Well said. And thank you so much for joining us, Annie, Lalla, and Eben Pagan. Really appreciate who you are and how you're showing up in the world. And thank you for being here today.
Great being here. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you, legendary explorers, for joining us on this cosmic journey today.
Your curiosity fuels our exploration of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
If you're hungry for more, dive into our website and connect with us on social media. All the links are in the show notes.
And stay tuned for our next mind-expanding episode. We can't wait to talk to you again in our next adventure.
Until then, remember, this is your life. So,
make it legendary.